Okay, this is lesson 13, volume of familiar solids, cones, and spheres, day 2. The first thing that we are going to look at is what is the formula for the volume of a sphere. That is volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. So here, when we look to compute the exact volume of the sphere shown below, remember, exact volume means that we keep pi in the answer. So here, what we do is we write our formula first. So volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Next, we look at our radius, which is right here, and we replace. So 4/3 pi, our radius is 4 cubed. Now what I do is I take my calculator and I multiply that. And when I multiply that, I get 64. And again, I put that 64 next to the 4/3. So 4/3 times 64 times pi. And when I multiply that, I have 85 and 1/3 pi centimeters cubed. And again, I leave this with pi, and I also leave it as a fraction and not using the 0.3 repeating. Okay, so our next example, we have example number 2, and this says a cylinder has a diameter of 16 inches and a height of 14 inches. And we also have this picture. And it says, what is the volume of the largest sphere that will fit into the cylinder? It says, what is the radius of the base of the cylinder? Well, the radius here is 8. Because remember, the diameter goes the entire way across. So if the diameter is 16, then we take that diameter, our radius is 16 divided by 2, which is 8. So then it says, could the sphere have a radius of 8 inches? And the answer is no. And this is because the height is 14 inches. Okay. So now, it says what size radius for the sphere would fit into the cylinder? Well, the radius that would fit in there is 7 inches. Okay. And that's because the diameter would be 14 inches. It says now that we know the radius of the largest sphere is 7 inches, what is the volume of the sphere? Well, we start with our volume. So we've got volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. And let me move this up here. Substituting in 4/3 here, pi 7 to the 3rd power, or cubed. Then we have 4/3. 7 to the third power, or 7 cubed, is 343 pi. Then when I multiply this together, I get 457 1/3 pi inches cubed. Okay. Our next question in our next exercise says use the diagram to answer the questions. So A says predict which of the figures shown above has the greater volume. Well, if I happen to look, I'm going to say the sphere, because it kind of looks like it would be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to say the sphere. So now it says use the diagram to find the volume of each and determine which has the greater volume. Well, okay. So let's do the cone first. So we have volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. So we have 1/3 pi. My radius here is 2.5. So 2.5 squared times the height, which is 12.6, which is right here. So 2.5 squared, we have 1/3 times 6.25 times 12.6 pi. And I'm going to leave the pi because pi is going to be the same in both. So we're actually really looking at the number itself. So here I've got, when I multiply it all together, I get 26.25 pi. So really what I'm looking at is this part right here. Now if I do the sphere, I get volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Well, my radius here is 2.8, so I have 4/3 pi times 2.8 to the third power, or cubed. So now when I multiply it together, I get 4/3 times 21.952 times pi. And when I multiply that out, because I have the decimal and the fraction, it's going to give me a decimal no matter what I do. And when I multiply that out, I get 29.2693, and that 3 is going to repeat, pi. And I put the line above the 3 because that's what's going to repeat. So when I compare the two, remember I'm looking at the numbers because the pi is what's going to stay the same. So I'm really basically looking at the numbers. When I look at the numbers and I compare the two, my sphere is what's actually the greater volume. So I actually guessed right. So my next example is number 2, and it says one of two half spheres formed by a plane through the sphere's center is called a hemisphere. What is the formula for the volume of the hemisphere? Well, think about this. If I cut this sphere in half, okay, my formula for the whole sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. Well, if I actually have to cut this in half, okay, and I have to cut this in half, then what I'm going to do is I can multiply this by 1/2. When I do that, then I can simplify. 2 goes into 2 once, and goes into 4 twice. When I do that, then my new formula then is going to be 2/3 pi r cubed. That ends this lesson.